really grateful. And, when I listen to all my predecessors' discussions and talks, I'm humbled by the tremendous amount of knowledge and wealth that it brings to the table. And that really makes this discussion enriching and interesting. I think that at the end of the day, as I always say, we are ultimately the learners for life. I don't believe that 28 years of experience of any that we have achieved in life is one and all. I think we need to sort of treat every second, every moment as a beginning of learning. And that's the philosophy with which, even in the capacity of a Wadhwani Advantage leader of Wadhwani Foundation, and in terms of looking at how to sort of combine the approaches of social objectives of creating employment, which is jobs creation, which we all know is significantly important for any country, more so for the developing country and predominantly for India, as we all know, and combine that element with the approach that we typically adopt successfully in using capitalist principles. And before I come to the specific topic, very quickly in 2 minutes, let me sort of touch upon how it relates to the topic that I'm going to speak on. It's about knowledge, information, finance, and access. And our mission of the foundation is really to provide knowledge to the entrepreneurs, because entrepreneurs are the ones who are supposed to solve the problems for the society. And they are in solving those problems for the society or ensuring that they create this opportunity at scale. They are basically ensuring that the knowledge results in wealth and well-being. And when we think about that particular objective, and we think about how does it result into the employment, which is a social objective, not only based on what we all know, but we all know that the livelihood is so important for all of us. Whether you are a professor, whether you are an entrepreneur, whether you are any other sort of job seeker in any other domain, employment is pretty important. And therefore, combining these two really gives me a tremendous energy to sort of talk about this topic, because it's really about ensuring that the entrepreneurs have access to knowledge, they have access to information, they have access to money, which is finance, and through which we are able to bring about a change in the society by creating employment. So I think that's a very sort of quick background and preamble to what I'm going to speak on. So there are two sides to this coin, right? So we are talking about access to knowledge and information and access to finance. I'll talk about both. So let's look at the first aspect, which is access to knowledge and information. Now, what I'm going to do in this session is that I'm not going to sort of spew sort of different statistics in terms of what's happening, but I think the most important thing for any knowledge seeker is to find out why of everything that we do. And in my experience of 28 years and in the capacity of leading this foundation in India for Advantage program, I've kind of zeroed in on some of the factors which are hugely responsible for lack of access of knowledge and information. It is also a circular loop. When I think about access, I also think about usage, because a particular level of usage also results in particular level of access. And I think it's very important to understand that. So there are a couple of factors I'm going to talk about. First is, I think we are an information-rich and insight-poor country. We do not know what we do not know. When I look at it, when I talk to entrepreneurs, they have tremendous ambition, they have tremendous zeal, they want to do something good, they want to sort of be the job creators, they want to do something that no one else has done, or they want to emulate somebody who's a role model that they think has had a lot of wealth, etc. But I think there is a humility that is required by everyone. And when I look at it, I spot very clearly there is a deficiency in terms of lack of willingness to know what they do not know. There is an admission that we know certain things and we do not know certain things. But the primary reason of there is a poor access to knowledge is because while there is information a lot, we have the digital media, we have plethora of information. In fact, we have an overload of information. But we are not able to convert that into insight, simply because insight building starts with humility to accept what we do not know. That's a fundamental, real, important reason that we should really focus on. Ability to make a behavioral change and making them entrepreneurs and everybody understand that you might be a scholastic person, you might be PhD, you might be doctorate, you might be the greatest successful entrepreneur on earth, but there are always things that you do not know. And I think when you look at that, the work that foundation is doing is precisely to change that mindset. So that's the first reason why we believe access to knowledge is a problem. Access to information is not, but access to knowledge. Insight building is taking a big hit. That's number one. Second is really, I think the whole idea about how knowledge translates into wealth and well-being. I can very clearly see there is a divide between those who want to seek knowledge and those who want to seek money. they want to create wealth. But I think we must understand and appreciate that there are examples in the society wherein the creation of knowledge really translates into wealth and well-being. People are able to understand the connect, and in fact, if you look at the empirical evidence, it's very clear that it's a virtuous circle, right? It's a virtuous circle. So when you create wealth, you have an ability or resource pool to access more knowledge. But when you access knowledge and use that knowledge, you have an ability to create more wealth. And then it goes circular. I think it's very important for all the people who push knowledge and create knowledge to understand that creating wealth out of it is not a crime. And those who seek money and want to create wealth must understand that it will not be sustainable unless there is a continuous knowledge creation, IP creation, feedback loop, feed forward loop. So that link fundamentally in the mind is missing, is one of the other reasons why there is poor access to knowledge and information, because the wealthy people after a certain amount of time stop really looking at creation of knowledge. And you will see that in the empirical evidence. The third generation, the fourth generation of a lot of family businesses really are the stages when the wealth destruction happens. That's because the sustenance of solving the problem, the society, and creating knowledge around that does not happen. That's very important. Second, the third reason is really the knowledge needs a guru and shisha. I think we have a dearth of both. And it's partly a bold statement I'm making, but I'm making it with a sort of awareness that when I talk about guru and shisha in our tradition, it's very clear that when shisha has to look at every piece of knowledge with an empty piece of glass. And guru, when they teach, and in fact, Richard Feynman, the famous physicist, actually said once that when you teach, you learn, right? And today we have us in a society when there's the culture of questioning, the culture of really looking at data, looking at empirical evidence, combine that with the gut or the intuition knowledge, and therefore ability to question your relationship with that of a guru or shishya is something which is missing. And that's something, Oriental science, we have so much wealth of knowledge that we have inherited from the past. But if you look at what we have been able to do with that knowledge, you hit a roadblock, right? You hit an obstacle. And that's principally because the Socratic method of questioning and continuously developing that loop is missing. So that's the third reason. I think there is also an absence of role models. So when we look at role models, it's very singular focus, right? So somebody who is wealthy, oh, fantastic. Somebody is a great businessman, businesswoman. Somebody who is very knowledgeable, oh, fantastic. He has a great knowledge. We don't see them together. The role models in terms of quantity and quality both are missing. Now, I'm also seeing there is a concept in psychology of derailment. Those who attain a particular knowledge, even after a certain point of time, derail because they believe that they have achieved it, they are the masters, and then they stop learning. On the other hand, there are wealthy people who also look at a lot of the knowledge creators and disseminators merely as resources to create wealth, not as equal participants in the society, basically to put them in the pedestal and create those role models. And that is something which is missing. The other reason is the modes of learning. And we all know that, literature, we are very good at literature, and it's very clear. Kerala is excellent at literature. Its tradition is very clear. In fact, entire India is very rich in literature. But today we must recognize that the modes of learning are changing pretty fast. It's visual, it's audio, it's experiential. If you look at the learning methods that we have, the knowledge that is disseminated to even the corporates, to entrepreneurs, today that basically is complete. It's not changed the extent of having a good media mix in terms of what is it needed to be in terms of the knowledge in different media. So that's very, very important. I think the other is the lack of feedback loop, and that has to go with my earlier point in terms of having peer reviews, having understanding of, let's say a particular business falls short, right? What are the areas of why they are lacking today? For example, today one of the biggest problems that MSMEs face is demand. But if you look at the hue and cry about how much money is talked about, the access to credit, access to finance, they're talking about giving concessions, subsidies, recovering money from corporates, all sorts of things are talking about. But if you compare that with how much talk is happening on demand creation, which is one of the fundamental reasons why the loop is not, it's very little, right? So it's very easy to complain about things are not happening. But what's the root cause? What's the correlating factors, and how should that result into feed forward for what we should be asking both the government as well as us is something which is missing, I feel. Adoption of technology and digitalization is another important factor. And this is something that we all read, so I'm not going to talk too much about that particular variable. I think just by using latest today, for example, Wadhwani Foundation does a lot of work in AI, artificial intelligence, machine learning, etc. And trust me, there are a lot of tasks, a lot of skills which have been completely changed, right? There is a whole subject of reskilling, upskilling that is happening simply because the traditional skills are something which are being done by the latest technologies, developing intelligence, developing algorithms, and coming out with predictive insights is completely changing the game. Now, the faster we realize it as a society, the access to knowledge and usage of information and knowledge will become better and better. But I think that adoption is still, to my mind, is not taking at a pace which it should if India were to sort of revive the whole MSME community. The other factor is lack of culture of innovation and acceptance. There have been certain sort of initiatives both in private as well as public sector by the government to incentivize innovation and creation of IP. But and that's a point related to the last point that I'm making on the slide as well, is that there is no acceptance of failures. And this is very, very harmful for innovation, right? Silicon Valley was not made just because somebody thought, we should create the infrastructure, give a lot of funding, and let's give it a push to entrepreneurs, to innovation, IP, and let's do it. No, there is an acceptance of society in a society that you could fail, and it's okay to fail. There are experiments that will succeed, there are experiments that will not succeed. The heart of entrepreneurship is basically to look at an opportunity or a problem statement in a society, build a use case, build great quality to solve that problem, then be speedy, and then build scale. Recently, I wrote in one of my articles about how MSMEs are facing a Bermuda Triangle of speed, scale, and quality. If you have quality, it's difficult to build scale at quality. It's difficult if you build sort of scale, then the quality deteriorates. And if you're doing both, invariably you could be slow, right? And I think that's something that we haven't cracked as an MSME community and as a society. And that's something which is very important to be cracked. So if you sort of collectively look at this problem, and I wanted to focus my entire session only on the drivers and why of this access to knowledge and information is about, I think if we are fundamentally able to solve some of these problems, we'll be in a far better position. So that's not access to knowledge and information.